Hey guys, it's Wayne from Sling Pilot Academy. I'm super stoked to share this next video with you. The last 2 weeks we've shown you our trip from Torrance to Oshkosh in both the Sling 2 and the TSI. The guys had an absolute blast flying into Oshkosh. This week we're going to do an in-depth coverage of the VFR Fisk arrival into Oshkosh. First step is to go and print the NOTAM. The NOTAM gives you detailed instructions on exactly how to fly in. It's an absolute blast. If you haven't done it, do it. Fly in with someone who's already done it, or do some good research beforehand, but it's so much fun to fly in. Enjoy the video.
All right, so we're going to do a quick breakdown on how we arrived into Oshkosh this year, 2022. So Jen and I did a little bit of pre-flight planning. We printed this out, the NOTAM document. This, I think to note, one of the biggest things, I thought it was a little overwhelming at first, but it's actually not too bad because most of this is designed visually for people without GPSs, without moving maps. It's a significant thing to navigate if you've never been, and it looks very similar out there in terms of terrain. There's no real mountains to give away your position, so it's lots of railroad tracks and lakes and towns and things like that. But these first couple of pages are just here to show the route, depending on where you're coming from. So we went through and digested most of this and realized that most of these transitions are like from the Milwaukee area, from the Chicago area, from the Madison area here, and then for people internationally, some of the rules. And then also for no radio, because there is a lot of those older aircraft. But this is where, on this page here, on page 5, is where we started getting the information that made sense to us. So because we were coming from the west, we stopped off here to get a little bit of fuel before we went to Oshkosh because we heard it was pretty hard to get fuel there. When we departed La Crosse, they were using the Fisk arrival, but the transition point was in Puckaway Lake. They've got the VFR waypoints on there, the VP-ENV, VPPLK, VPGRN. So after we got onto the ATIS and were listening, we realized that there was actually a transition happening from the Green Lake transition from this point here. So what I ended up doing was I removed this point from our flight plan because we didn't really need it. And we just went to this place just to be safe, just because it generally does, people come from every direction to the Green Lake. So we try to get on it still a little bit. So we just put this Puckaway Lake transition in there just for safety. After this fix, we went to the Green Lake transition, which was, you can see in the document here, is the part that we went through and digested. So we had down here, if you read this, the arrival, it just draws a straight line across in the GPS, like a magenta line, a direct line. So we followed that, but we stayed just south of the lake, as it shows you to follow south. And then from there on, we pretty much just follow this whole track here. So it goes all the way along up to Ripon. So from this Ripon transition is really when the fun starts because you're really close to the airport. And then this is when you get into radar contact and they start talking to you about the rock and the wings and all that kind of stuff. So the frequencies, so we went through and read this whole page and highlighted these parts, these are the parts that pertain to us. So the ATIS, which is really important, they say to get it 60 miles out, which we did. We had a little bit of trouble getting it from the VOR, so we had to get a little bit closer to get the ATIS. And then once we had the ATIS, we switched over to Fisk approach and started monitoring this frequency, 120.7. And we descended to the 1,800 feet at 90 knots. I feel like that's super important. I would say that the most important part is staying at 1,800 feet because it's so many different types of aircraft from different years, like vintage aircraft and modern aircraft like ours. So you've got everyone at the same altitude, which can get a little tricky when people coming from every direction to Green Lake, which is why we elected to stay along that path for a little bit longer, just so we had a bit of breathing room. But yeah, so we wrote this down on our kneeboards. I had this highlighted, I had it on my iPad. But this was like the meat and potatoes of the arrival from Ripon. So we had all this information stored in. I think we descended, I took it down to 1,800 when we were near Puckaway Lake. I was pretty much at 1,800 the whole way. And then, so we're at 1,800 90 knots. You could you could see the traffic you were converging with to join the route. But it was pretty obvious in terms of distancing to stay between each other, like forward separation and lateral separation from other aircraft. It wasn't too bad because everyone is flying visually. So because we had this GPS points plugged into our GPS, we were following these points along the route. If you read the NOTAM, it doesn't actually want you to fly point to point. They don't want you to fly the GPS directly, like in these direct lines. What they want you to do is fly visually using these waypoints as a guide. So that, like for instance, they say south of Green Lake, and follow just like along the waterline. But when you get a little bit further north, like from Ripon, there's a train line. I'll zoom in here a little bit, you can see the satellite over this train line here. And they want you to follow the train line all the way into Oshkosh. from the Fisk arrival. And if you follow the GPS, you'll be on this line here. So you're on this line here, which is not what they want you to do. They actually want you to follow this train line here. So at one point, I was following this line, looking for traffic, and then I realized that the train was off to the right, so we came back over and we went back over the train line to follow it. Yeah, we started following this train line here, which is really important. And the controller for the Fisk arrival, he was correcting people as well.
All aircraft, when you're inbound beyond Ripon, be sure you fly over the railroad tracks. Do not navigate direct point to point. Fly over the railroad tracks.
Railroad. Do you see the railroad?
Oh, hang on. Where is the railroad track? We lost it?
I think that's the railroad, right? Yeah.
Down here?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, we got it. Yep.
Yeah, because it wasn't obvious at first. Like, you couldn't see it at first. Because you see in the town, you're like busy on the town, you're trying to find like what heading to go on, like after the checkpoint that this is. And then yeah, we found the train line after that. So we corrected for it. I think this is the train line here. It takes you all the way up. And then pretty much from Fisk onwards, you're almost in the airport vicinity. You're right on the edge of the Delta airspace. From there, like, he gets you to rock your wings to identify yourself, and you really got to rock the hell out of it to impress him. No, I'm kidding. We rocked our wings. It was around Ripon, actually, just before Ripon, I think.
8.5.
Half-mile southwest of Fisk. Rock your wings.
Ooh, it's us.
Nice rock, nice rock. Get in a C-type aircraft for me.
That's a Sling 2, 6 Lima.
A Sling 2, runway preference.
Runway 27.
Okay, stay straight ahead along those railroad tracks. I saw you correct out there off that RNAV, and nicely done. Overfly those railroad tracks on your way to the right downwind for runway 27. Turn inside the gravel pit and monitor the tower 118.5. Welcome to the show. Hope you have a great time.
Thanks, mate. There's the railroad track. Yeah, there it is.
I'm so proud of you. You got the nice rock, nice rock.
And we rocked our wings and he identified us. So then he pretty much gave us, you could hear other traffic, like he was telling them to go left or do 360s. And there's also a whole procedure here to do holding. So if they get really inundated with traffic, there's a holding procedure, which we didn't actually have to do. These holding procedures here. So I'll show you to hold around Green Lake, just in a box or a rectangle course, around the area in Green Lake if they need to, or around Rush Lake. But we didn't need to. It was pretty quiet that day when we came in, to be fair, so we didn't have to do any of that hold stuff, which was nice. And then once you hit Fisk, like I said, you're gonna be talking to someone. He asked for like a runway preference. And at the time when we got the ATIS, it made sense, and we'd prepared, like we'd kind of more or less briefed the approach to do runway 27. Yeah, from Fisk this point in, it was like a 45-degree northeast all the way to, they call it the gravel pit. So there's a quarry there or the gravel pit, and then you just fly south of it and come into the pattern. But yeah, he gave us a runway preference. He said, what runway do you want to land today? And I said, runway 27. And he said, yep, sure, you're gonna enter the downwind. Welcome to the show. And he said, monitor tower. So we put this, I think Jen put this tower frequency in. So then we had the tower frequency in, we were monitoring it, we're listening to it. Pretty much after that, he'll start talking to previous people in line behind you. When we were on the 45, Tower started talking to us low-wing aircraft, because it was pretty quiet when we came through. She said, low-wing aircraft, aim for the orange dot and land on the green dot. And then she told us to start descending, so we dropped down below 1,800 feet. And then from there, it's pretty much like doing a short approach. Yeah, just coming in, following the downwind. And then at first I was prepared for the dots, but I didn't realize that it was aim for one like in the base turn, so aim for the orange and then turn final for the green. So you're turning final on the runway as opposed to turning final lined up with the runway. So it's a little bit non-standard, so I was confused at first, but it's more or less just a short approach, not that tricky, but it took my brain a couple seconds to process. So I was in the downwind here, and she said, descent, start your descent.
Low wing over the gravel pit, start your descent.
What dot are we going to get?
She didn't say yet.
Low wing approaching midfield, you make the right turn at the orange dot, and you can land runway 27 on the green dot.
Green dot for 27.
Lima.
Last one. That's 2. A little bit of trim, a little bit of power. Been talking about doing short field landings with so many people, I better put my money where my mouth is now. Power back a little bit, Christian, slow down the plane. Alright, ooh, big gust, ooh, big gust, massive gust, hello.
Oh,
on the dot, yeah, on the dot.
Hell yeah.
Holy moly, that wind was actually pretty crazy.
Yeah, I was gusting right
Did you feel it at the end there?
Yeah.
And it'll be a left to right turn off the runway, follow flaggers to parking. Welcome to Oshkosh.
Thank you.
a little interesting, but it wasn't too bad. There's a lot of pressure to land on the dot, and every year, unfortunately, there's some sort of incident, but it wasn't that big of a deal. I could have floated a little bit past the dot or landed just prior to the dot. I think maybe when it gets a little busier, it might be a little bit more important, but for the most part, it was fine. So after that, we were both pretty flustered from being there in the moment, and after, I don't know, was it 20 odd hours? It was quite a relief to get there. We ended up taking a right turn, which we probably should have done a left turn to come on the taxiway to get down our area down here, and then she gave us a clearance to cross the runway. And then after that, it was pretty standard stuff. They've got ushers like taking you through, and we went down this taxiway here, which is, let me see that taxiway, Alpha, and then Alpha 1. We crossed runway 1836, Papa 1, and then Papa 1, they took us all the way down to our area where we had a booth and a display for the aircraft. Another big part of it is having your display in the cockpit, depending on where you're actually going. So you just hold up the sign, rather than talking to everybody for convoluted taxi clearances through an airport that's got hundreds of planes coming through. They just have a very simple system with a sign. And then all the people that are ushers on the ramp, like they're like ramp agents just taking you through, they all know the locations of these signs. So they saw ours and they just went straight this way, follow this way, follow this way. Probably the most stressful part was me trying to calculate how I was going to go orange to green dot, but I worked it out. So I think that a lot of it, this NOTAM document seems quite daunting, but for the most part, it's just a lot of information on how to fly visually. And once you have, if you're used to using an iPad or any kind of like electronic flight bag, yeah, you can see the information isn't too tricky. I usually put my view on the satellite view, the aerial view here, so I can see the satellite of the ground. So this is what they want us to do. So they want us to look outside visually, so I had this view the whole time to figure out where I was. And it was, you could do the VFR chart too, you can still see the lakes and all that stuff, but it doesn't really give you a depiction of size as well as having the satellite. You can kind of gauge distance landmark-wise. Well, mainly just fields and roads and train lines and towns and lakes. It's flat. There's not too much terrain, not too many big city buildings. You can't see like Long Beach City like we can to give you a gauge of where you are. So I understand the depth because there's a lot of information in here, but it's all really useful depending on your arrival. So it does help you out. But a lot of it is because it covers every aircraft type, every kind of arrival. So once we figured out that only about 4 pages really were important to us at the time, it was nice he gave us the option to land on what runway we wanted. Probably should have not picked that one because I ended up landing with a massive tailwind, but if you got your wits about you and you've got like a plan in your head about how to get in, the terminal area when you're in the airport, like the vicinity of the airport, it's pretty standard. I wouldn't say it's anything different to just being in a busy traffic pattern and a Delta airspace anyway. If you're used to flying in those environments like we are in Sling, it's not a big deal. It feels pretty good. I wouldn't say it was easy, but it was pretty chill at the end.
So if you've flown into Oshkosh and you want to leave some notes on your experience, or if you've noticed anything that we forgot to mention, absolutely leave a comment below. Don't forget to like and subscribe the video. We noticed that only 20% of the people that watch our videos are subscribers. Really helps our channel if you subscribe, really helps our channel if you like the video. Thanks.